The 50th floor conference room of Morgantech shimmered in the amber glow of the city's evening pulse, its vast windows framing a skyline that thrummed with ambition and restless energy. Elena Morgan, 35, sat alone at the sleek mahogany table, her sharp blue eyes locked on a rosewood chess set, its intricately carved pieces catching the light like whispers from a forgotten past. As CEO, she'd transformed her mother's fledgling tech startup into a global titan. Her mind, a blade that cut through corporate rivalries with ruthless precision. The chess set, her mother's final gift before cancer stole her away, was a refuge, each piece a tether to evenings spent learning strategies and dreaming of simpler days. Tonight, with a pivotal board meeting looming, one that could secure $1 billion merger, she moved a bishop with deliberate care, seeking the clarity the game always offered. The 64 squares were her sanctuary, a world where every move had consequences, and victory rewarded foresight, not charm or flattery. A faint knock broke her reverie, and she called, "Come in," her voice steady but distracted. Daniel Evans, a 40 janitor, stepped into the room, his faded coveralls and cleaning cart marking him as part of the invisible army that kept the tower gleaming. His movements were quiet, practiced, but his hazel eyes lingered on the chessboard with a flicker of something Elena couldn't place: curiosity, perhaps, or recognition. She studied him, noting the lines etched into his weathered face, the broad shoulders that carried more than just the weight of his work. On a sudden impulse, fueled by the loneliness that clung to her like a shadow, she leaned back and offered a playful challenge. "Beat me at chess, and I'll marry you," she said, a smirk curling her lips, expecting a nervous laugh or a polite retreat. Instead, Daniel paused, his gaze locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I'm Daniel," he said, his voice low and measured, carrying a weight that belied his unassuming appearance. "And I play for keeps." The words landed like a spark in dry grass, igniting a tension that filled the room. Elena's pulse quickened, her confidence wavering as she realized she might have underestimated the man before her. His hands, calloused but steady, hovered near the board, and she sensed the depth in him that her corporate world rarely allowed her to see. She gestured to the chair across from her, the air charged with the promise of a game that felt like more than just a diversion. Daniel sat, his movements deliberate, as if he belonged in this space as much as she did. The chessboard between them became a battlefield, not just of strategy, but of something unspoken, a collision of two worlds that were about to reshape each other. Elena reset the pieces, her fingers brushing the rosewood queen, and felt a thrill she hadn't known in years, a mix of challenge and curiosity about the man who'd accepted her reckless wager with such quiet conviction. As they positioned their pawns, the city's lights pulsed beyond the glass, a silent witness to the moment that would change everything. She'd expected a quick, clumsy game perhaps, a few hesitant moves from a man who'd stumbled into her, challenged by chance, but Daniel's calm focus unsettled her. His hazel eyes scanned the board with a surgeon's precision, and when he advanced his king's pawn to squares, the move was deliberate, a quiet declaration of intent. Elena countered with her own pawn, her usual confidence tinged with curiosity. As she watched him, he played with a fluid grace, his hands moving pieces with a familiarity that spoke of years spent mastering the game, not just playing it. Each move unfolded like a story, his strategy classical yet unpredictable, establishing control of the center while keeping his deeper plans veiled. By the 5th move, Elena realized she was facing a mind as sharp as her own, and by the 10th, a flicker of doubt crept in. She was in trouble. Daniel's knight danced to a square she hadn't anticipated, pinning her bishop and forcing her to rethink her position. She leaned forward, her corporate armor slipping as she fought to counter his relentless advance. His rook slid into place, cutting off her king's escape, and by the 20th move, she was scrambling, her mind racing through defenses that crumbled under his quiet, surgical precision. "Check," Daniel said softly, his voice carrying no triumph, only focus, as his queen found a lethal diagonal. Elena's breath caught, her eyes darting across the board, searching for a way out, but his pieces had woven a net she couldn't escape. 2 moves later, his bishop delivered the final blow. "Checkmate," he said, leaning back, his expression calm but his eyes alive with the satisfaction of a game well played. The board lay still, the rosewood pieces a testament to her defeat, her ivory king tipped in surrender. Elena stared at the position, her mind reeling not from humiliation, but from awe. This wasn't just a loss, it was a revelation. She'd been outplayed by a janitor, a man she'd dismissed as insignificant, and the realization stung as much as it fascinated her. "You're no amateur," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, a smile tugging at her lips, despite herself. Daniel began resetting the board, his movements precise, almost reverent. "I never said I was," he replied, his tone even but not unkind. "You assumed I didn't know the game because of my job. Assumptions can be dangerous." "Where did you learn to play like that?" she asked, curiosity overriding her bruised pride. Daniel placed the last pawn and met her gaze, his hazel eyes holding a story she could only guess at. "I had a life before this one," he said simply. "Chess was part of it, until other things took priority." The weight of his words hung between them, hinting at sacrifices she couldn't yet fathom. Before she could ask more, he rose, pushing his cart toward the door with the same quiet efficiency that had brought him into her world. "Thank you for the game, Ms. Morgan," he said, his formality a gentle reminder of the distance between their lives. "I should finish my rounds." The door closed softly behind him, leaving Alina alone with the reset board and a tangle of emotions she hadn't felt in years. She traced the edge of a night, her mother's voice echoing in her mind lessons, about patience, about seeing beyond the obvious. Daniel had dismantled her assumptions as deftly as he'd dismantled her defense, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this game had shifted something fundamental in her. In the days that followed, she found herself replaying their match, not just the moves but the way his presence had filled the room, steady and unassuming yet undeniably powerful. Her corporate world, with its endless meetings and calculated risks, felt hollower than usual, the victory of her recent merger negotiations paling against the memory of his quiet checkmate. She caught herself glancing at the lobby during her coffee breaks, hoping to spot him, his cart, his unhurried stride. Meanwhile, Daniel returned to his routine, mopping floors and emptying bins, but the game lingered in his thoughts too. He hadn't played seriously in years, not since his wife's death had forced him to trade tournaments for stability, for his daughter Sophie's survival. At 40, his life was measured in small victories: Sophie's laughter, her rare days without pain, the health insurance that kept her heart condition at bay. Chess had once been his world, a place where his mind could soar, but now it was a relic, a set on his kitchen table, where he taught Sophie simple moves between hospital visits. Yet, sitting across from Elena, he'd felt a spark of his old self, the prodigy who'd once dreamed of grandmaster titles. Her challenge, flippant as it was, had woken something in him, a reminder of the man he'd been before love and loss reshaped him. As he cleaned the executive floors, he wondered about Hertha, woman behind the title, the loneliness he'd glimpsed in her eyes. Their game had been more than a contest. It was a conversation, a fleeting bridge between two worlds that shouldn't have crossed. Alina Morgan's office, a fortress of glass and steel, felt colder than usual as she sat at her desk, the city's evening lights casting long shadows across her laptop. The chess game with Daniel Evans replayed in her mind, not just the moves but the way his steady gaze had unraveled her assumptions, exposing a blind spot she hadn't known existed. Driven by a restless curiosity, she pulled up the company's employee database, telling herself it was routine due diligence, though her racing pulse betrayed a deeper motive. Daniel's file was sparse: 40 years old, widowed, one dependent, no disciplinary issues, but a single line buried in his employment history stopped her cold. Former professional chess player, USCF, rating 2412. Her fingers trembled as she cross-referenced the rating, diving into online archives that painted a vivid picture of a younger Daniel, a teenage prodigy who'd blazed through national tournaments with a blend of audacity and precision. Chess blogs from the early 2000s hailed him as a rising star, an international master at 17, inches from grandmaster status before vanishing from the scene. Forum threads speculated about his disappearance, mentioning a family tragedy, but public records filled in the gaps. His wife Claire had died of leukemia 6 years ago, leaving him to raise their daughter, Sophie, alone. The weight of his sacrifice hit Alina like a physical blow. He'd traded a life of acclaim for a janitor's badge, all to secure health insurance for a child whose survival depended on it. She leaned back, staring at the chess set on her shelf, its rosewood pieces silent witnesses to her growing unease. Daniel wasn't just a skilled player. He was a man who'd chosen love over glory, a choice Alina had never faced because she'd never loved anything more than winning. Meanwhile, in a modest apartment across town, Daniel sat at a worn kitchen table, watching Sophie draw with colored pencils, her small hands creating vibrant worlds, despite the oxygen monitor clipped to her finger. At 9, Sophie was a burst of light, her brown curls and quick smile masking the heart condition that stole her breath on bad days. She'd inherited her father's sharp mind and her mother's gentle spirit, asking questions about everything from constellations to night moves. The chess set on the table, a chipped relic from Daniel's tournament days, was her favorite toy, its pieces characters and stories she spun while Daniel watched, his heart aching with pride and fear. Her condition had worsened lately, hospital visits growing more frequent, each one a reminder of how fragile their life was. He'd given up chess to be her rock, trading international matches for night shifts that paid for her medications. He wondered about her, the CEO who'd challenged him with a mix of arrogance and vulnerability, her blue eyes betraying a loneliness that mirrored his own. Back at Morgantech, Alina found herself lingering in the lobby during Daniel's shifts, pretending to review reports while stealing glances at him. One afternoon, their paths crossed deliberately when she accidentally spilled coffee near his cart, sparking a conversation about Sophie's love for drawing. His face softened as he spoke of her, and Alina felt a pang of envy for the warmth in his voice, a devotion she'd never known. Their talks grew frequent, tentative at first, but laced with a growing ease, her asking about Sophie's latest artwork, him inquiring about her day with a quiet respect that disarmed her. Then came the night that changed everything. Alina was leaving the building when she heard Daniel's voice in the parking garage. Tight with panic, speaking to a 911 operator, she followed the sound and found him kneeling beside Sophie, her small frame trembling as she struggled to breathe, her lips tinged blue. "Stay with me, Sophie," Daniel murmured, his hands steady despite the terror in his eyes. An inhaler pressed to her mouth, offering little relief. Without hesitation, Alina dropped her bag and pulled out her phone, her voice cutting through the chaos with the authority that had built her empire. "This is Alina Morgan. I need an ambulance at Morgantech's parking garage now. Child in respiratory distress. Authorize the heliport if needed." Her words snapped the situation into focus. Paramedics arriving within minutes, oxygen tanks hissing as they stabilized Sophie. Daniel climbed into the ambulance, his hand clutching his daughter's, and Alina followed in her car, driven by an instinct she couldn't name. At the hospital, she navigated insurance forms and expedited Sophie's care, her influence clearing bureaucratic hurdles. Hours later, Daniel emerged from the pediatric ward, exhaustion carving lines into his face but relief softening his eyes. "She's stable," he said, his voice raw. "Thank you." The gratitude in his gaze pierced her, and for the first time Alina felt useful in a way her boardroom victories never allowed. Standing in the sterile waiting room, surrounded by the hum of machines and the weight of unspoken fears, she realized she wanted to know this man, not just as a player across a chessboard, but as someone whose life had reshaped her understanding of strength. The hum of Morgantech's executive floor felt stifling as Alina Morgan sat in her office, the city's dawn painting the skyline in hues of pink and gold. Her victory in securing Sophie's hospital care had left her buoyant for days, a rare warmth softening the edges of her relentless ambition. She and Daniel had grown closer, their conversations evolving from cautious exchanges to moments of genuine connection, shared glances in the lobby, brief chats about Sophie's drawings or the chess strategies they both loved. But that fragile bond was about to be tested. Late Tuesday morning, a junior analyst named Ethan Carter uploaded a grainy video to the company's internal social platform, captured through the conference room's glass wall during Elena's chess game with Daniel. Her playful wager beat, "Me, and I'll marry you," rang clear, followed by Daniel's steady response and the intense match that ended in her defeat. The caption read, "CEO bets marriage on chess and loses to the janitor. Is this a contract?" Laughing emojis and snarky hashtags fueled its spread, and by noon, the video had ricocheted through departments, racking up thousands of views. Comments poured in, a venomous mix of mockery and speculation. Some called Alina desperate. Others labeled Daniel a gold digger, exploiting her wealth. The post leaked beyond Morgantech, hitting social media and sparking gossip columns that painted her as reckless, her leadership questionable, Elena's assistant, Mia, knocked hesitantly, her face pale. "There's a situation," she said, showing Elena the video on her tablet. Watching her impulsive challenge reduced to a public spectacle, Elena felt the blood drain from her face. The comments were worse: sexist jabs at her single status, classist sneers at Daniel's job, and snide questions about company policy violations. Her phone buzzed incessantly, board members demanding explanations, clients probing her judgment, reporters sniffing for scandal. The worst came from her Aunt Margaret, the board's chair, whose voice crackled with disapproval over a late afternoon call. "Elena, this is a circus," she said. "Your behavior undermines our credibility. The board is questioning your ability to lead." Elena's defense that it was a joke, a moment of levity, sounded hollow even to her, the weight of public scrutiny crushing her usual composure. By evening, her frustration boiled over, and she sought Daniel in the service elevator, where he was loading his cart. The confined space amplified her anger, her words sharp as she confronted him. "Did you know someone was filming us?" she demanded, her voice trembling with betrayal. "Was this some scheme to humiliate me, to leverage my position for something?" Daniel's face hardened, his hazel eyes narrowing as he absorbed the accusation. "I didn't know," he said, his tone clipped but steady. "I don't want your money or your status, Elena. I thought we were building something real." His words stung, exposing the raw edge of her distrust. She pressed further, her voice rising. "You played me like I was nothing, made me look like a fool, in front of my company. Was that the plan all along?" Daniel's composure cracked, a flash of pain crossing his face. "I played chess, same as always," he said. "You made an offer you didn't mean, and I won a game you didn't expect. That's not a hustle, it's just what happened. I thought you saw me, not just the guy with the mop." His voice softened, but the hurt was clear. "I was wrong." The elevator doors opened, and he stepped out, leaving Elena alone with the echo of her own accusations. The silence was suffocating, her anger dissolving into regret as she realized she'd lashed out at the one person who'd seen her beyond her title. The next days were a blur of damage control. The video was removed from the company platform, but copies proliferated online, fueling gossip that painted her as a caricature of privilege. Elena buried herself in work, avoiding the pitying glances of her staff and the whispers that trailed her through the halls. Her board meetings grew tense, Margaret's disapproval a constant shadow. She didn't see Daniel, his absence a quiet ache she couldn't shake. At home, Daniel focused on Sophie, whose heart condition demanded constant vigilance. He read her stories, helped her sketch, and tried to ignore the sting of Elena's words. He'd let himself believe in their connection, a rare light after years of loss, but her accusations reminded him how easily he could be reduced to his job, his past brilliance dismissed. Sophie sensed his quiet mood, asking about the nice lady from work with a child's intuition. Daniel brushed it off, but the question lingered, a reminder of the hope he'd briefly allowed himself. Elena, meanwhile, grappled with her own guilt. She'd built her life on control, on seeing 3 moves ahead, but she'd misjudged Daniel entirely, projecting her fears onto him. Late at night, she replayed their game, not for strategy but for the moment their eyes had met, when she'd felt truly seen. The video's fallout exposed her vulnerability, but it also clarified what she valued: Daniel's quiet strength, Sophie's bright spirit, the possibility of a life beyond her office walls. She wanted to reach out, to apologize, but pride and shame held her back, leaving her to wonder if she'd destroyed something irreplaceable. The hospital's pediatric ward was a stark contrast to Morgantech's gleaming towers, its fluorescent lights casting a cold glow over Daniel Evans as he sat beside Sophie's bed, her small hand clutching his. Her heart condition had flared again, this time with a terrifying intensity, her breaths shallow and labored despite the oxygen mask. Daniel's face was a mask of calm for her sake, but his eyes betrayed the fear that had become his constant companion. The call to Elena Morgan came at 2 p.m., his voice tight as he asked if her insurance connections could still help navigate the hospital's maze. Without a second thought, Elena left a board meeting mid-sentence, her car cutting through downtown traffic with a single-minded urgency she hadn't felt since her mother's final days. She found them in the chaos of the emergency ward, Sophie hooked to monitors, Daniel whispering reassurances while doctors adjusted IVs. Elena's presence was a quiet force, her calls to hospital administrators, ensuring Sophie's transfer to a specialist's care within the hour. As night fell, she stayed, not because her influence was needed anymore, but because leaving felt like abandoning something vital. Sitting in the family lounge, she watched Daniel through the glass door, his shoulders slumped but his hand never leaving Sophie's. The sight cracked something open in her, a realization of how small her corporate battles were compared to his fight for his daughter's life. When Sophie stabilized around midnight, her breathing steadier, Daniel joined Alina in the lounge, his exhaustion palpable but his gratitude unspoken. "You didn't have to come," he said, his voice low, and she saw the weight of their elevator argument still lingering in his eyes. "I wanted to," Alina replied, her voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "I'm sorry, Daniel, for what I said, for assuming you were anything less than who you are. I was wrong." He studied her, his hazel eyes searching for sincerity, and then nodded, a small gesture that felt like a door creaking open. They talked through the early hours, the hospital's hum fading as they shared truths they'd kept guarded. Daniel spoke of his wife's illness, how he'd walked away from chess to be there for her final months, and how Sophie's condition had redefined his world. Alina admitted her own isolation, the way her ambition had built walls no one could breach, not even herself. The conversation wasn't a resolution, but a bridge, fragile but real, spanning the chasm her accusations had carved. Over the next weeks, their connection deepened, no longer confined to stolen lobby moments. Alina joined Daniel and Sophie for park outings, watching Sophie chase butterflies with a joy that belied her fragile health. They shared dinners at a family diner near Daniel's apartment, where Sophie's chatter about her drawings filled the silences, and Alina found herself laughing, truly laughing, for the first time in years. Daniel taught her to see chess differently, not as a battlefield but as a story, each move a choice that could create rather than destroy. Sophie, with her bright curiosity, became the heart of their trio, her questions pulling Alina into a world of wonder she'd forgotten. One evening, at Daniel's modest apartment, they played a chaotic chess game, Sophie inventing rules that turned pawns into explorers and rooks into castles with secret passages. Alina, usually so calculated, let herself lose spectacularly, her laughter mingling with Sophie's giggles as Daniel watched, his smile soft with something that made her heart ache. This was what she'd been missing, not victory, but connection, the messy, beautiful reality of caring for others more than her own pride. Her transformation rippled outward, noticed by her staff, who saw her pause to ask about their lives, or by her assistant, Mia, who remarked on her newfound warmth. At Morgantech, Elena's meetings grew less combative, her decisions tempered by a perspective that valued people over profit margins. For Daniel, Elena's presence was a quiet revolution. He'd grown used to being invisible, his intelligence buried under the label of janitor, but her questions about his chess past, her respect for his choices, made him feel seen in a way he hadn't since his wife's death. Sophie, too, sensed the shift, her drawings now featuring a tall lady with a crown alongside her father's stick figure knight. Their time together became a rhythm. Saturday mornings at the park, evenings with takeout and chess, moments where the world felt whole despite Sophie's uncertain health. But beneath the warmth lay a tension. Elena's corporate world loomed, the viral videos fallout still simmering. The board, led by her Aunt Margaret, was set to meet soon, and whispers of her reckless behavior threatened her position. Yet, sitting with Daniel and Sophie, Alina found herself caring less about her title and more about the life they were building, piece by piece, move by move. She didn't know how to reconcile her worlds, but for the first time, she wanted to try, not for control, but for the possibility of something deeper. The Morgantech boardroom, with its polished oak table and panoramic city views, felt like a battlefield as Elena Morgan stood before the board, her Aunt Margaret's stern gaze anchoring the room's tension. The viral video of her chess game with Daniel Evans had lingered like a storm cloud, its fallout threatening her position as CEO. Margaret, flanked by board members in tailored suits, opened the meeting with a clipped summary of the public relations issue, her words laced with familial disappointment. "Your judgment is under scrutiny, Alina," she said, her voice cutting through the room's heavy silence. "This company cannot afford distractions that undermine our reputation." 6 months ago, Alina would have fought tooth and nail, marshalling data and strategic arguments to secure her throne. But now, Standing in the room where she'd built her empire, she felt a shift. Her priorities had realigned, shaped by Daniel's quiet strength and Sophie's radiant spirit. Instead of defensiveness, she chose honesty, her voice steady as she addressed the board. I made a mistake, not in playing chess, but in assuming I could keep my life separate from who I am. Daniel and his daughter taught me what matters: connection, not just competition. If you believe that makes me unfit to lead, I'll step down. The room stilled, her vulnerability disarming the board's skepticism. Margaret's expression softened, and after a tense deliberation, they voted to retain her, moved by her and the leader she'd become. The victory was bittersweet, not for the title preserved, but for the clarity it brought. She no longer defined herself by the corner office. Months later, Elena stood in the backyard of a modest house. She and Daniel had bought together, a cozy haven with a small garden where Sophie could play. The afternoon sun filtered through a young maple tree they'd planted, casting dappled light on the chess set between them, its maple and walnut pieces gleaming. Their weekly Sunday games had become a ritual, less about checkmates than about the laughter and stories that wove through each move. Sophie, now healthier with new treatments from specialists Elena's connections had secured, sat cross-legged on the grass, sketching a knight as a dragon-slaying hero. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his hazel eyes crinkling as he watched Sophie narrate her latest tale, her voice bright despite the oxygen monitor she still wore. Elena moved a pawn, her strategy loose and playful, savoring the moment rather than plotting 3 moves ahead. The game meandered, punctuated by Sophie's interruptions, opinions on which piece should save the kingdom next, and Elena found herself grinning, her heart full in a way her corporate triumphs never achieved. Daniel had returned to chess, not as a competitor but as a coach, mentoring kids at a local community center. His love for the game rekindled through Sophie's joy. Elena too had changed, balancing her CEO role with this new life. Her decisions at work now tempered by a warmth her staff noticed and admired. The house, with its cluttered kitchen and walls lined with Sophie's artwork, was a testament to their shared journey, a life built not on ambition but on moments like this, where love trumped strategy. As the game paused, Sophie climbed into Elena's lap, pointing to a bishop and declaring it a wizard protecting the forest. Elena laughed, her arms wrapping around the girl who'd become her daughter in every way that mattered. Daniel reached across the table, his calloused hand finding hers, and their eyes met, a silent acknowledgement of the improbable path that had brought them here. "Your move," he said, his smile carrying the same quiet confidence that had checkmated her months ago. Elena studied the board, not for victory, but for the story they were telling together, narrative of trust rebuilt, of sacrifices honored, of a family forged through shared vulnerability. Sophie's prognosis was hopeful, the specialists optimistic, and Daniel's face had lost the haunted edge that once defined it, replaced by a contentment that mirrored Elena's own. She moved a knight, setting up a playful trap, and teased, "If I win this time, you owe me a rematch from that first game." Daniel chuckled, countering her move with a bishop that turned her trap against her. "You're getting closer," he said, "but I've got a few surprises left." Sophie looked up, her brown curls bouncing as she grinned. "Maybe you don't have to win," she said, her voice carrying a wisdom that stilled them both. "Maybe it's about playing together." The words settled over them, a truth as simple and profound as the sunlight warming the board. Elena squeezed Daniel's hand, feeling the weight of their shared choices, the video's fallout, the hospital nights, the slow rebuilding of trust. This was the real game, not one of kings and queens on a checkered board, but of building a life where love was the measure of success. The chess pieces stood mid-game, forgotten for now, as laughter filled the backyard, a promise of countless Sundays to come, each one a move toward a future they'd chosen together.